This is our day 3 on-field power and conditioning development. The reason I call it power and conditioning rather than strength is that at the beginning of practice, we're going to work on power. So all of this stuff, the A and the B, is done before practice, and its goal is to increase power through sprints and jumps and everything like that. Whereas the second half of it, after the practice, after the baseball work, is going to be this whole circuit here, which is going to be more geared towards conditioning. This is our pre-practice power circuit. We have 3 different stations, but first of all we're going to divide our athletes up into groups of 5 or 6 and then subdivide them into our groups of our different stations for the circuit. We have 3 different stations here. So if you have 15 players and it gets easy, you get 5 here, 5 there, 5 there, but if you have more than that, then you're going to subdivide it. We don't really need any equipment other than a medicine ball for this one, so if you have more than 15 players, you're going to need more than 2 medicine balls. So for our first example here is if we have 5 players on the medicine ball backwards toss, you're going to split them up, 3 guys at one end, 2 guys at the other end. One guy throws it backwards for distance, then he kind of follows his throw. Second guy throws it back towards the third guy, so on and so forth. This just ensures that everyone has enough work to rest ratio. So that's what I mean by 1 repetition here. But within that group of 5, they're going to throw it back and forth as many good times as they can within the 60 seconds. I'm not too worried about how many reps they get. They're probably going to get 2 to 3 times per station when they do this. But again, the real secret here is to ensure that there's power a lot on each one. Same thing with the triple jump. One athlete's going to perform 3 consecutive jumps in a row, and they're going to walk back. The next guy is going to go, but it's just one guy goes, followed by the other 4 to 5 guys in their group, and then they just keep going back and forth. So again, you might get 2 rounds of this within those 60 seconds. So I mean, the main point here is to emphasize the quality of the jumps over the quantity. It doesn't matter how many times they get to do this, but each time is going to be powerful. With the split squat, jump and stick, station 3 here, we're going to make sure that they get about 4 jumps. So you're going to jump up, stick it, jump up again, stick it. So you're going to do that 4 times, which means 2 per side within those 60 seconds. So if you do that 4 times, the other guys in your group are going to do it, and then maybe you get through it 2 times within your group. Onto the next one. Med ball backwards throw for distance. This is kind of a power exercise when we're doing it for distance. You really want to make sure you're coming down. This is obviously in slow motion, but when you load the ball between your legs, you want to make sure that it's nice and controlled. If you go with a very violent sort of load, you need to be really strong in order to bring your arms down fast and then to have it come back up, especially if you're using a fairly heavy medicine ball. It's anywhere between like 10-20 pounds or higher. But when you think about when you're loading, you want to keep your back muscles kind of strong. You don't have to keep them super flexed, but you want to keep them strong so that when the ball changes direction from going down to back up, you have those muscles loaded and they're ready to accept the power that your hips are going to be generating. Again, this is a hip type of exercise. You just want to explode off the ground, and then obviously we're trying to throw it as far as we possibly can. Triple jump. It's a great exercise. It's also sort of a really good test to play around with as well. So again, you're just doing 3 jumps and then you're sticking the last one. Walk back each time you're doing this is not going to be an exercise you're going to be doing for sort of conditioning. It's an explosive one, so you're going to get lots of time in between. But the real secret on this one is to really just kind of minimize the ground contact time. So in between each jump, as he jumps here, bounces off the ground. Great way to think of it. You can use this kind of term. You want to pop off the ground, or you want to act like a spring. But it's a very tough exercise because there's a lot of momentum coming, and you need to have very strong legs in order to accept all that energy when you land, and then turn that energy back into jumping when you load and then reload into the next jump. Split squat, jump, and stick. The big thing here is you're going to start from a dead stop. The whole point of the exercise is when you jump and then you land, you need to come to a dead stop. So each time you should have a definite pause here. So I'm just getting set up here. I jump, I pause, I reload with my arms each time. You really need to make sure that you use the arms. So you jump, you try to stick the landing. So you really want to be able to stick the landing and come to a complete stop right at that sort of perfect 90-degree angle. Back knee is not going to be hitting the ground necessarily. You jump up and then you want to see how quickly you can stick that. and come into that perfect landing. So you need to work on, when you're jumping, the acceleration part of jumping off the ground, but then a quick deceleration to come to a complete stop. Relay transfer sprint drill. This is the layout for it. Again, a great sprint drill to encourage some competition and a bit of teamwork, hand-eye coordination with it. This is the general layout of it. You can imagine you got your foul line here, then maybe this is where you're starting, and then you've got one area here that's 5 to 10 yards in distance, followed by a sprinting area, which is 15 to 30 yards, and then another sort of transfer area, which is 5 to 10 yards distance here as well. So when you do this one, you get I'll go over it in a second. You're going to divide your teams up into groups. So basically, one athlete starts here with the ball. He runs, sprints through here, and within this transfer area, he transfers the ball over to the other athlete, which is going to be starting at this area. He's going to transfer the ball to him, and he's going to run back as fast as he can, and then he transfers it to this athlete who's starting. And then again, the transfers have to happen within this area, in this area, while the sprinting happens in this area. In order to perform this drill, you need to divide your teams into teams of 5, and then what you do is assign each team with a lane of 4 cones, again to designate where those transfer areas are and the sprinting areas. So if you do, again, divide them into groups of 5, I find this to be the best number. So when you do this, 2 athletes per team start at the far cone, while the other 3 start at cone number 1. This allows the first guy from cone, starting at cone 1, to run down. He transfers the ball over to the second guy who's starting at cone 2. It'll just work out that way. I'll explain that in a second. Even out the teams to your discretion when you do it. I mean, if we're going to be doing multiple races and stuff like that, if one team continuously wins, you have the discretion to sort of make trades in order to increase the competition so that there's intensity. If one team is continuously finishing last, the guy who's running last on that one is not getting the intensity or the training that he needs in order to get better, so we need to make sure that we're doing that. Again, dividing the teams up into 5 here is the major component, where that's a good ratio of making sure that each guy is running hard, but not having insufficient amount of rest, in order so that each time that he runs, we need to make sure that he's running hard in order to increase that intensity. If you only divide them into groups of 3, and sure, you'll increase the quote-unquote conditioning component of the exercise, but you're diminishing the training and running intensity in order to make guys truly faster. So again, the relay transfer sprint drill, just again going over this cone. If you've divided your team into 5, you have 3 guys starting here, 1, 2, 3, and you have 2 guys starting over here. So guy 1 runs from here, sprints down, transfers it over to guy number 2. He's going to run down over to number 3, 4, 5. Each time you do this, you're only going to do 1 race, where each guy only runs once. So we're going this way for 1, back for 2, this way for 3, back for 4, and then 5. So the race will end here. Know beforehand who your 5th guy is on each lane, so that you can tell, so you'll know who to look for when they cross this finish line here for the 5th guy. Again, we're always going to do just races of 1, so that we have lots of rest, and to ensure that there's lots of different races to add for competition. When we do the sprint program for this one, this is one example of how to lay it out. So the middle distance that we're going to be running, that's our sprint distance here. So we'll do 5 races where we only have 15 yards in between the transfer areas. You can assign random points to this one. In this case, I've assigned 2 points per race. So if you do 5 races, there's a potential of up to 10 points there. As the sprint distances increase, we're going to go from 20, where we're going to perform 4 races, down to 25, where we perform 3 races, and then finally we're going to do 3 races at 30 yards. We're only going to do 2 of them, and you can see the points kind of go up within them. This is just in order to make sure that you can have a little bit of fun and competition with them. But look at the amount of rest that you get between each race. So for the shorter distances, for the 15 and the 20, we're only going to have 30 seconds in between each race, and we're doing 9 total races between them. But for the longer distances, we're going to have 60 seconds in between. You can play around with these times rather, but don't go much lower than that. If you don't have enough time to do this, to do as many races, just cut down on the number of races rather than cutting down on the time in between the races. This is our post-practice conditioning. I've set this up so that we can have groups of 2 going at a time, and because of the amount of the time that we're using for our work and our rest, by dividing groups of guys into groups of 2 and having 8 different stations, this essentially gives you the opportunity to have a working station and a rest station happening at each one. So this should give you enough time, enough space, to have upwards of 32 guys, because you're going to have 2 guys at each particular station, and you can imagine between station 1 and station 2 there's a rest station. So you do the sledgehammer for 30 seconds and then you rest for 30 seconds. So what that can mean is one group of 2 guys are going for 30 seconds on the sledgehammer. Once the 30 seconds is over, they immediately transfer it over to the other guys, and they're going to go for 30 seconds. So there's always going to be someone working at one particular station. So in between, again, like I said, in between each station, between 1 and 2, you can imagine a rest station in between there. So what that means is you can have half of your guys, if you have exactly 32 guys, you would be able to have, again, 16 of them working at a time at one of these 8 stations. Well, the other 16 guys rest, but there's going to be 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off the whole time. So because of that, each station is going to last a minute, and there's 8 stations. Each round is going to take exactly 8 minutes. So that's why I did, for the number of sets here, I put 2 sets, which would give us 16 minutes. If you got more time to do that, great. You can add a third one in there, which is going to bring you up to 24 minutes. So each time you're going to do this, it's going to be adding 8 minutes to the end of your practice. But the 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off is going to ensure that when they do exercise at any one of the stations, like the sledgehammer, the walkouts that I'll go through, when you do go, you get to work hard, because for every 1 second that you're working here, 30 seconds working, you're going to get exactly 30 seconds of rest. So that's what's going to dictate this intensity. But the end goal of this is to sort of keep your heart rate up fairly high for the entire duration of the exercise. So you're going to be working for 30 seconds and then resting for 30 stations. But truly, the sign of good conditioning is how fast you can recover in between those in between working sets. So for a pitcher, between pitch 1 and pitch 2, how well can you recover so that you can increase the amount of velocity that you throw with every single pitch. So this is where conditioning comes into play. Sledgehammer exercise, you need a sledgehammer and a tire, obviously. The weight of the sledgehammer is going to determine kind of your technique of how your hands can move on it. If it's a really heavy one and you're not very strong, keep your hands separated the whole time, keep in the same position and slam it. In this video here, he's got enough strength that as he brings it up, his hands are separated, but as he comes back down, his hands slide back down on top of one another in order to create that sort of velocity that way. Because again, the goal here is to get lots of power. No real sort of too much technique with it, just make sure that you're in a safe environment, no one's standing too close to you, and with that, I mean, you do five slams on one side and then you go 5 onto the other, and just kind of keep alternating for however long you need to do this exercise. Walkouts, first and foremost, really need to make sure you control yourself on the way out. So as you walk your hands out, don't go too quickly, and the main thing is that your hips are the last part that comes down to the ground. To make that perfectly straight line when you get to the end of it. So as he gets to this position here, it's a perfectly straight line, and his hips are the last thing to get to that position. Make sure that it's only your hands or your feet moving. So obviously here he's moving his feet in, hands are moving, then he moves his hands out. And you can progress that way. If you have space, you can keep moving in one direction. If you don't have space, you can walk your hands out and then walk your hands right back into your feet again. But the goal is that on the way out, we're working on some good shoulder stability and core strength. And then once we walk our feet towards our hands, we're going to be getting a bit more of a hamstring stretch. Medicine ball squat and throw. This is in slow motion, so it's going to take a little bit longer for him to load into it, but it is a good example of showing you how you really need to sit your hips back into that load and then explode forward with them, and then that energy that you've generated with your hips is going to go through your core and through your shoulders and arms, and ultimately to and through the medicine ball, and you're going to throw it for either distance or height depending on your environment that you're in. When you do this, make sure that both arms are contributing equally, so it's going to be a chest pass, and a good sign is that the ball won't have any rotation. It'll be kind of like a knuckleball in the sense that you've contributed equal amounts of power from both arms, and you let go of the ball at the exact same time with both hands. Overhead sit-up, you really want to make sure your feet stay on the ground. You go straight up and down. So you see when he does this, is the bar, if I draw an imaginary line up from his hips straight up to the sky here, the bar isn't going to pass that line, and when he comes back down, his arms aren't going to go this way. So that's what I mean by an elevator shaft. So think if we got an elevator shaft here and here, and the bar is going to go straight up through that. Just on field, you can use a baseball bat, but on the way back down, you really want to make sure that you control yourself on the way down. Don't just plop on the ground, but control yourself on the way down. Think of one part of your spine, each vertebrae of your spine hitting the ground one at a time, and probably taking a minimum of 3 seconds to come back down in between each rep. Run there and back. Simple sprinting exercise. So whatever the time is that you have, so let's say you have 30 seconds time, you want to see how far you can get there and back. So probably you're going to be spending 14 seconds running there, and then between the turn and going back, you need that other 30 seconds to get there. So it's nothing more than just running. You can set a bunch of different cones out at different distances. So these guys are running to this distance here, and if they got the next time they want to do it, maybe they're going to try to get a little bit further in order to prove that they're progressing. So a good standard to think about is maybe for a 30-second one, see if you can run 100 yards and then back. So 200 yards, can you run 200 yards in under 30 seconds? So if you're coaching this one, just set up a series of cones, maybe different colors would be great. So say the green's the furthest one, then it goes red, then it goes blue. You just want to see which athlete can get there, and then obviously back past the finish/start line before their time, in this case 30 seconds, is up. Overhead walking lunge. This can be used with dumbbells, barbell, or if you're on field, just a bat. It's a great little warm-up exercise. In order to keep that implement, whether it be a bat or a barbell or whatever, still overhead, you need to have a lot of core stability and a lot of shoulder stability. And the walking lunge part is just in order to get your legs strong, and also a bit of flexibility in them as well. So when doing this, you want to make sure that your arms are straight up overhead, so you're covering your ears up with your biceps. Your elbows are locked out at all times, and it's control. This is what this exercise is about. Because you have something overhead, it's going to be a lot tougher to kind of control through your core, through your shoulder, everything like that with this one. So control is the name of the game. So have like the feet touching together in between each rep, and make sure this one looks good. Battling rope, another fun little exercise. I don't really care if you kind of use this sort of alternating method you see on the right here, or double arms at the same time. I find that a lot of people, if you're doing this for 30 seconds, you're going to want to kind of alternate between the two. When you do this, you want to get back into a good position where you're sort of sitting back. So you see he's sitting back here. Hips are back, but chest is up. It's obviously a little bit different technique when you're doing it one arm at a time versus the two at a time. But you just want to try to stay stationary with your lower body for the most part. As you progress this one, obviously you can get bigger ropes, but for the most part you just want to have the ropes go higher. So they're rippling higher and they're rippling further. You got to be able to make ripples all the way down to the end of the rope there. Plank up downs. You perform this by starting in a push-up position. You just go down to one forearm, go down to the other, and then just keep alternating back and forth. The big part here is you just want to be able to keep your hips level, so when you come down, they come down. When they go up, you go up. But also from side to side, they're going to want to rotate, and that's going to happen no matter what, but you want to try to minimize the side-to-side rotation. To make this one tougher, you really want to make sure that, let's say, right where her elbow goes down, her hand's going to go right in that exact same position. So if she brought her hand a little bit further back to exactly where her elbow touches the ground, so if the elbow and palm replace one another, this is going to make this exercise a little bit more difficult.